The vast expanse of space had always called to humanity, a siren song of discovery and adventure. But on that fateful day in 2157, as the research vessel Horizon breached the heliopause, no one could have predicted the monumental shift in human history that was about to unfold. Dr. Elara Chen, the ship's exobiologist, peered intently at her console, brow furrowed in concentration. "Captain, I'm picking up some unusual readings. It's like nothing we've ever seen before." Captain Marcus Steele, a veteran of countless deep space missions, felt a familiar surge of adrenaline. "Can you be more specific, Doctor?" Before Chen could respond, the ship's AA chimed in. "Captain, unknown vessel detected on long-range scanners. Configuration does not match any known human designs." The bridge fell silent, the weight of the moment hanging heavy in the recycled air. Steele's voice was steady as he gave the order. "All hands to alert stations. Let's make history, people." As the horizon drew closer, the alien ship came into view. Its sleek, organic lines spoke of an advanced civilization, but even to untrained eyes, something was clearly wrong. The vessel listed in space, its hull marred by what appeared to be weapons fire. "Life signs?" Steele asked, his eyes never leaving the view screen. "Faint, but present," Chen replied. "Captain, they're dying." The next few hours were a blur of activity. Despite the potential risks, Steele made the decision to initiate first contact and offer aid. As the airlocks engaged and the atmosphere equalized, humanity held its collective breath. The aliens, when they emerged, defied easy description. Bipedal, but with an iridescent, almost crystalline skin that seemed to shift and flow. Their eyes, large and multifaceted, reflected the light in mesmerizing patterns. Dr. Chen stepped forward, hands raised in what she hoped was a universal gesture of peace. "We come in friendship," she said, her voice trembling slightly with the weight of the moment. The lead alien, its form wavering like heat shimmer, extended a limb. A series of musical tones filled the air, beautiful but incomprehensible. And then all hell broke loose. Later, they would learn that the gesture Chen had made was seen as a grievous insult in the aliens' culture. In that moment, however, all they knew was chaos. The aliens, despite their weakened state, moved with incredible speed. Energy discharges filled the air, leaving scorch marks on the horizon's walls. "Fall back," Steele shouted, dragging Chen behind a bulkhead. "Security teams to the airlock, non-lethal force only." The skirmish was brief but intense. When the smoke cleared, both sides had suffered casualties. The aliens were contained, but the cost had been high. As the adrenaline faded, the gravity of the situation settled in. First contact, the moment humanity had dreamed of for centuries, had devolved into violence and misunderstanding. In the days that followed, a tenuous peace was established. The aliens, who called themselves the Lyrathani, were refugees fleeing the destruction of their homeworld. Their ship, damaged in the escape, had been limping through space for years before encountering the horizon. Dr. Chen, despite her initial misstep, threw herself into the task of building a bridge between the two species. She worked tirelessly, analyzing the musical language of the Lyrathani, searching for patterns and meaning. "It's not just communication," she explained to Captain Steele one evening, her eyes alight with excitement. "Their language, their very being, is tied to frequencies we can barely perceive. It's as if they exist partially in another dimension." Steele nodded, the implications slowly sinking in, and the crystals on their skin. "Some kind of organic technology, I think. It's how they interface with their ships, their tools, maybe even each other. We've only scratched the surface." As fascinating as the scientific discoveries were, tensions remained high. The Lyrathani, grateful for the aid but wary of their saviors, kept largely to themselves. The crew of the Horizon, for their part, struggled with a mix of curiosity and fear. It was Ensign Zora Okafor, a young communications specialist, who made the breakthrough. Late one night, unable to sleep, she found herself in the observation lounge, staring out at the stars. A solitary Leviathan stood nearby, its crystalline form shimmering in the starlight. On impulse, Zara began to hum, a simple melody her grandmother had taught her. The Leviathan turned, its faceted eyes focusing on her. Then, to Zara's amazement, it began to resonate, harmonizing with her song in ways that should have been impossible. For several minutes, human and alien created music together, bridging the gulf between their species with pure sound. When they finished, Zara felt a connection, an understanding that went beyond words. She rushed to wake Dr. Chen, babbling excitedly about her experience. Chen, bleary-eyed but quickly grasping the importance of the discovery, immediately set to work incorporating this new approach into her translation efforts. Progress was slow, but steady. As the days turned to weeks, a picture began to emerge of the Leviathan and the threat they fled. Their homeworld had been consumed by a relentless, implacable enemy they called the Void, an enemy that devoured worlds, snuffing out all life and light. Captain Steele listened grimly to the reports. And this Void, it's heading in the direction of Earth. The Leviathan elder, its form pulsing with mournful tones, nodded. The gesture, carefully learned to facilitate communication with the humans, carried with it a weight of sorrow that needed no translation. Steele's jaw clenched. Then we stand together, or we fall alone. As the horizon raced back towards Earth, carrying with it news that would forever change humanity's place in the cosmos, the seeds of an unlikely alliance were sown. Human and Leviathan, so recently at odds, now found themselves united against a common threat. Dr. Chen, watching the blue marble of Earth grow larger on the viewscreen, felt a mix of hope and trepidation. Humanity had dreamed of first contact for generations, but no one had imagined it quite like this. They had reached for the stars and found both wonder and terror waiting for them. As they prepared to break orbit and deliver their world-shaking news, Chen caught the eye of the Leviathan elder. In that moment, a wordless understanding passed between them. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The adventure was only beginning. The alliance, the news of the Leviathan, and the impending threat of the Void sent shockwaves through human society. Governments scrambled, militaries mobilized, and the public oscillated between panic and fascination. In the midst of this global upheaval, a bold plan was set in motion. Operation Sanctuary, as it came to be known, was unprecedented in scale. Vast swaths of land were set aside to house the Leviathan refugees, their crystalline structures rising like alien forests against Earth's skies. But integration proved to be far from smooth. Commander Alexei Volkov stood at the edge of New Lyria, the largest Leviathan settlement, watching the aliens move about their daily routines. Despite months of cohabitation, the sight still filled him with a mix of wonder and unease. Fascinating, isn't it? Dr. Chen's voice startled him from his reverie. She had been appointed as the chief liaison between humans and Leviathan, a role that seemed to age her by the day. Volkov grunted. Fascinating and dangerous. Did you hear about the incident in Sector 7? Chen sighed, rubbing her temples. The resonance disruption. Yes, I've been dealing with the fallout all morning. The incident in question had been a painful reminder of how little they still understood about their alien allies. A group of Leviathan, attempting to repair their living quarters, had inadvertently generated a frequency that shattered every piece of glass within a kilometer radius. No one had been seriously hurt, but the event had reignited fears among the human population. We're running out of time, Volkov said, his voice low. The Void grows closer every day, and we're still struggling to work together. As if to underscore his point, a commotion broke out nearby. A human construction worker, his face red with anger, was shouting at a Leviathan. The alien's crystalline skin pulsed with agitated rhythms, a cacophony that set human teeth on edge. Chen rushed over, Volkov close behind. What seems to be the problem here? She asked, trying to project calm. The worker turned to her, gesticulating wildly. "This thing keeps interfering with our equipment. We can't get any work done with them around." The Lurthani emitted a series of sharp, discordant tones. Chen listened intently, her brow furrowed in concentration. "He says he's trying to help. The frequencies your machines emit are inefficient, harmful." Volkov stepped in, his commanding presence diffusing some of the tension. "All right, let's take a step back. Chen, can you explain to our Lurthani friend that we appreciate the help, but we need to coordinate better?" As Chen began to translate, a new voice cut through the air. "Perhaps I can be of assistance." All heads turned to see Zara Okafor approaching. The young ensign had been reassigned to Earth after her breakthrough on the horizon, her unique ability to harmonize with the Lurthani making her invaluable to the integration efforts. Zara closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and began to hum. The melody was complex, interweaving human rhythms with alien harmonics. The Lurthani's agitation visibly subsided, its form smoothing into more pleasing contours. To everyone's amazement, the alien began to resonate in turn. The two sounds merged, creating a symphony that was neither wholly human nor Lurthani, but something new and beautiful. When the impromptu concert ended, the tension had dissipated. The Lurthani extended a limb towards the construction worker, who, after a moment's hesitation, shook it awkwardly. "He says he understands now," Zara translated, her voice filled with excitement. "He wants to show us how to modify our equipment to work in harmony with their technology." Volkov watched in astonishment as human and alien began to work together, their movements becoming a kind of dance as they adjusted the construction machinery. "I'll be damned," he muttered. Chen smiled, a glimmer of hope in her eyes. "This is what we need more of. Not just coexistence, but true collaboration." The breakthrough in Sector 7 proved to be a turning point. As word spread, similar scenes began to play out across New Lyria and other settlements. Humans and Lurthani, so recently at odds, started to find ways to complement each other's strengths. Lurthani crystal technology, it turned out, had applications that human scientists had only dreamed of. Their ability to manipulate energy fields and resonate across dimensional boundaries opened up new frontiers in physics and engineering. In return, human adaptability and innovative thinking helped the Lurthani overcome challenges they had long thought insurmountable. Together, they began to make progress that neither species could have achieved alone. But even as the alliance grew stronger, the shadow of the void loomed ever larger. 3 months after the integration breakthrough, an emergency meeting was called. Representatives from Earth's governments gathered alongside Lurthani elders in a chamber specially designed to accommodate both species. Admiral Helena Cruz, recently appointed to lead Earth's defense forces, stood before the assembly. Her face was grim as she activated a holographic display. "Ladies, gentlemen, and honored Lurthani," she began, her voice carrying across the chamber. "I'm afraid I have grave news. Our long-range sensors, enhanced by Lurthani technology, have detected the leading edge of the void. It's moving faster than we anticipated." A murmur of alarm rippled through the crowd. Cruz continued, her voice steady but urgent. "At its current speed, it will reach our solar system within 2 years." The chamber erupted into chaos. Human officials shouted questions and demands, while the Lurthani emitted a cacophony of distressed tones. Cruz raised her hands, calling for silence. "We knew this day would come," she said. "Now is not the time for panic. We have made incredible strides in the past months. Human ingenuity combined with Lurthani wisdom has produced defenses we could only have dreamed of a year ago. But it's not enough. Not yet." She turned to Dr. Chen and Zara, who sat side by side with the Lurthani delegation. "Dr. Chen, Ensign Okafor, you've been working on something that might turn the tide. Tell us." Chen stood, her face a mixture of excitement and trepidation. "We believe we found a way to weaponize the harmonic resonance between our species, a kind of dimensional disruption that could potentially destabilize the void itself. Zara chimed in, her young face alight with determination. It's not just a weapon, it's a symphony of destruction, fueled by the very thing that brought our species together, music. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Then, slowly, a Leviathani elder rose. Its crystalline form shimmered as it began to emit a series of tones. Chen listened intently, then translated for the assembly. The elder says, this is why they were led to us, not just for sanctuary, but for salvation. Together, we will face the darkness and sing a song of defiance that will echo across the stars. As the meeting adjourned, a new sense of purpose filled the air. Human and Leviathani alike felt the weight of destiny upon them. The road ahead would be difficult, fraught with challenges and sacrifices. But for the first time since the threat of the void had been revealed, there was real hope. In labs and workshops across the globe, the work intensified. The harmonic disruptor, as the weapon came to be called, would require resources and coordination on a scale never before seen. But with each passing day, the alliance grew stronger. As night fell over New Lyria, Volkov found himself once again at the settlement's edge. This time, however, he was not alone. A Leviathani stood beside him, its crystalline form glowing softly in the twilight. No words were exchanged, no melodies shared. They simply stood together, human and alien, united in their determination to face whatever the future might hold. The stars twinkled overhead, oblivious to the monumental events unfolding beneath them. Somewhere out there, the void approached. But here on Earth, a new hope was being forged in the crucible of adversity. The battle for survival had only just begun. Certainly, I'll now proceed with Part 3 of the Guardians of Hope. Part 3, The Enemy Revealed. The Harmonic Disruptor project progressed at a feverish pace. Across the globe, humans and Leviathani worked tirelessly, their efforts fueled by the looming threat of the void. But even as hope grew, so too did the desire to understand their enemy. Captain Lyra Saito stood on the bridge of the UES Defiant, Earth's most advanced starship. A hybrid of human and Leviathani technology, it represented the pinnacle of their alliance. As the ship prepared to embark on its maiden voyage, Lyra felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. Final systems check complete, Captain, her XO, Commander Dax, reported. We're ready to depart. Lyra nodded, her eyes fixed on the view screen. Take us out, helm, slow and steady. As the Defiant glided out of space dock, a shimmering figure materialized beside Lyra. Kroll, the ship's Leviathani advisor, pulsed with anticipation. The stars sing a new song today, Krell intoned, its crystalline form refracting the bridge lights. One of unity and purpose. Lyra smiled. Though she was still learning to interpret the nuances of Leviathani communication, the excitement in Kroll's tones was unmistakable. Let's hope it's a song of victory, she replied. The Defiant's mission was twofold, to gather intelligence on the approaching void and to test the prototype harmonic disruptor in real-world conditions. As they journeyed towards the edge of known space, the crew, a mix of humans and Leviathani, worked to fine-tune their revolutionary weapon. Weeks passed. The Defiant pushed further into the unknown, its sensors probing the darkness ahead. Then, on the 37th day of their voyage, alarms blared across the ship. Captain, Dax called out, his voice tense. We're picking up an anomaly dead ahead. It's massive. Lyra leaned forward, her heart racing. On screen. The view screen flickered to life, revealing a sight that would haunt the crew for years to come. A vast, roiling darkness stretched before them, devouring light and matter alike. Tendrils of nothingness reached out, grasping at the very fabric of space-time. The void, Krell whispered, its form pulsing with a mix of fear and sorrow. The devourer of worlds. For a moment, the bridge was silent, the crew transfixed by the horror before them. Then Lyra's training kicked in. Tactical, Analyze that thing. I want to know everything: composition, energy readings, weak points. Helm, maintain our distance. We do not engage unless absolutely necessary. As the crew sprang into action, Lara felt a chill run down her spine. The void was more terrifying than any of them had imagined. How could they hope to stand against such a force? Hours passed as the Defiant cautiously observed the void. The more they learned, the more impossible their task seemed. The void wasn't just consuming matter, it was unraveling reality itself. It's like a cancer in the universe, Dr. Elara Chen explained, her hologram flickering on the bridge. The exobiologist had been crucial in developing the harmonic disruptor and was monitoring the mission from Earth. It spreads by breaking down the fundamental forces that hold our reality together. Lara frowned. Can the disruptor affect it? Chen's expression was grim. Theoretically, yes, but we'd need to get much closer to have any real impact. The risk would be... Her words were cut off as the ship suddenly lurched. Warning klaxons blared. We're caught in some kind of gravitational pull, Dax shouted over the noise. The void, it's reaching for us. Lara's mind raced. They weren't ready for this confrontation, but they had no choice. Prepare the harmonic disruptor. All hands, brace for impact. What followed was chaos. The Defiant, caught in the void's grasp, struggled against forces it was never designed to withstand. The hull groaned, systems flickered, and for a terrifying moment, it seemed as though the ship would be torn apart. Then, above the din of straining metal and panicked shouts, a new sound emerged. Kroll, standing at the center of the bridge, began to resonate. The crystal formations on its body vibrated, emitting a haunting melody that seemed to pierce the very fabric of space. Human crew members, remembering their training, joined in. Voices raised in harmony, blending with Kroll's alien tones. The ship itself became an instrument, its hybrid systems amplifying and focusing the sound. On the view screen, the void's tendrils seemed to recoil. Where the harmonics touched, the darkness wavered, revealing glimpses of normal space beyond. It's working. Chen's voice cut through the cacophony. The disruptor is destabilizing the void's structure. Push harder. Lara, her own voice joining the chorus, felt a surge of hope. For a brief, shining moment, it seemed as though they might break free. But the void was not so easily defeated. With a silent roar that shook the Defiant to its core, it lashed out. Energy tendrils, darker than the space between stars, slammed into the ship. Hull breach on decks 3 through 7, Dax reported, his fingers flying over his console. We're venting atmosphere. Lara made a split-second decision. All power to engines and shields. Get us out of here now. The Defiant's engines flared to life, straining against the void's pull. For several agonizing seconds, the ship hung in the balance between salvation and oblivion. Then, with a final burst of power, it broke free. As they retreated at maximum warp, the bridge was eerily quiet. The elation of their narrow escape was tempered by the sobering reality of what they had witnessed. Damage report, Lyra ordered, her voice hoarse from singing. Dax's response was grim. We've lost a third of the ship, Captain. Life support is stable, but barely. We'll need extensive repairs before we can even think about returning home. Kroll, its form dimmed from the exertion, spoke softly. We have wounded the beast, but at great cost. The song of victory remains unfinished. Lara nodded, her mind already racing with the implications of their encounter. They had survived, yes, but the true battle was yet to come. The void was more powerful, more alien than they had ever imagined. Their weapons, their strategies, everything would need to be reconsidered. As the Defiant limped back towards Earth, its crew battered but unbroken, Lara sent out a tight beam transmission. The message was brief, but it would change the course of the war to come. Void encountered. Harmonic disruptor partially effective. Prepare for worst. We're coming home. Back on Earth, as the message was received and its contents digested, A grim determination settled over human and Lurthani alike. The enemy had been revealed in all its terrifying glory, but in that revelation lay hope, for in knowing their foe, they could now truly begin to fight. The Defiant's mission, though costly, had not been in vain. It had shown them the face of their enemy, and in doing so, had lit a fire that would forge their alliance into something unbreakable. As news spread, as governments convened and strategies were redrawn, a phrase began to circulate, whispered in the corridors of power, shouted in the streets, sung in the crystal towers of New Lyria. We are the light, we are the song, and we will not go quietly into the void. The true war was about to begin. Operation Firewall. The return of the UES Defiant, battered but unbowed, marked a turning point in the war against the void. As Captain Lyra Sato and her crew shared their harrowing experience, a new sense of urgency gripped both humanity and the Lurthani. The enemy was no longer an abstract threat. It had a face, terrible and awe-inspiring in its cosmic hunger. In the months that followed, the alliance between humans and Lurthani deepened. The partial success of the harmonic disruptor had proven that their combined strengths could indeed affect the void. Now, they needed to amplify that effect exponentially. Dr. Elara Chen stood before a holographic representation of the void, her eyes narrowed in concentration. Around her, a team of human scientists and Lurthani resonance experts worked feverishly. The key, Chen mused, is not just in the harmony, but in the counterpoint. We need to create a sonic tapestry so complex, so intricate, that it unravels the very fabric of the void's existence. Kroll, who had become an invaluable member of the research team after the Defiant's mission, pulsed in agreement. Our songs must become a universal constant, as fundamental as gravity or light. As they worked, a bold plan began to take shape. Operation Firewall, as it came to be known, was audacious in its scope and terrifying in its potential consequences. The plan was this: to create a network of massive harmonic resonators throughout the solar system. These resonators, combining human engineering with Lurthani crystal technology, would generate a protective field of sound and energy. This firewall would not only shield the solar system, but also actively push back against the encroaching void. But there was a catch. To power such a massive undertaking, they would need to harness the energy of the sun itself, and to do that, they would need to build a Dyson swarm, a vast array of solar collectors encircling the sun. The scope of the project was staggering. It would require resources on a scale never before attempted, the cooperation of every nation on Earth, and technological leaps that seemed almost impossible. Admiral Helena Cruz stood before the United Earth Council, her face etched with determination. I won't lie to you, she said, her voice carrying across the hushed chamber. Operation Firewall is a gamble. It will push us to our limits and beyond, but it's a gamble we must take. The alternative is extinction. The debate raged for days. Some argued that the resources would be better spent on evacuation ships, on finding a new home among the stars. Others feared that tampering with the sun could lead to catastrophe. In the end, it was the Lurthani who tipped the balance. An elder, its crystalline form shimmering with ancient wisdom, addressed the council. We have wandered the stars, it intoned, its words translated by Zara Okafor. We have seen worlds die, civilizations crumble before the void, but never have we encountered a species with your drive, your ingenuity. If any race can stand against the darkness, it is humanity, and we stand with you. The vote was unanimous. Operation Firewall would proceed. The next year was one of frenetic activity. Every factory on Earth was repurposed for the war effort. Orbital shipyards worked around the clock, constructing the components for the Dyson swarm. The moon was transformed into a staging ground, its surface bristling with launch platforms and assembly bays. Operation Firewall. The return of the UES Defiant, battered but unbowed, marked a turning point in the war against the void. As Captain Lyra Saito and her crew shared their harrowing experience, a new sense of urgency gripped both humanity and the Lurthani. The enemy was no longer an abstract threat. It had a face, terrible and awe-inspiring in its cosmic hunger. In the months that followed, the alliance between humans and Lurthani deepened. The partial success of the harmonic disruptor had proven that their combined strengths could indeed affect the void. Now, they needed to amplify that effect exponentially. Dr. Ilara Chen stood before a holographic representation of the void, her eyes narrowed in concentration. Around her, a team of human scientists and Lurthani resonance experts worked feverishly. The key, Chen mused, is not just in the harmony, but in the counterpoint. We need to create a sonic tapestry so complex, so intricate, that it unravels the very fabric of the void's existence. Kroll, who had become an invaluable member of the research team after the Defiance mission, pulsed in agreement. Our songs must become a universal constant, as fundamental as gravity or light. As they worked, a bold plan began to take shape. Operation Firewall, as it came to be known, was audacious in its scope and terrifying in its potential consequences. The plan was this: to create a network of massive harmonic resonators throughout the solar system. These resonators, combining human engineering with Lurthani crystal technology, would generate a protective field of sound and energy. This firewall would not only shield the solar system, but also actively push back against the encroaching void. But there was a catch. To power such a massive undertaking, they would need to harness the energy of the sun itself, and to do that, they would need to build a Dyson swarm, a vast array of solar collectors encircling the sun. The scope of the project was staggering. It would require resources on a scale never before attempted, the cooperation of every nation on Earth, and technological leaps that seemed almost impossible. Admiral Helena Cruz stood before the United Earth Council, her face etched with determination. "I won't lie to you," she said, her voice carrying across the hushed chamber. "Operation Firewall is a gamble. It will push us to our limits and beyond, but it's a gamble we must take. The alternative is extinction." The debate raged for days. Some argued that the resources would be better spent on evacuation ships, on finding a new home among the stars. Others feared that tampering with the sun could lead to catastrophe. In the end, it was the Lurthani who tipped the balance. An elder, its crystalline form shimmering with ancient wisdom, addressed the council. "We have wandered the stars," it intoned, its words translated by Zara Okafor. "We have seen worlds die, civilizations crumble before the void, but never have we encountered a species with your drive, your ingenuity. If any race can stand against the darkness, it is humanity. And we stand with you." The vote was unanimous. Operation Firewall would proceed. The next year was one of frenetic activity. Every factory on Earth was repurposed for the war effort. Orbital shipyards worked around the clock, constructing the components for the Dyson swarm. The moon was transformed into a staging ground, its surface bristling with launch platforms and assembly bays. Meanwhile, the Lurthani focused on refining the harmonic resonator technology. Their crystalline cities became vast laboratories, humming with otherworldly energies as they pushed the boundaries of what was possible. But even as hope grew, so did the shadow of the void. Long-range sensors showed it accelerating, as if sensing the threat to its advance. The race against time grew ever more desperate. Captain Lyra Saito, fully recovered from her ordeal on the Defiant, found herself at the forefront of the operation. Her experience with the void made her invaluable, and she was tasked with overseeing the deployment of the Dyson swarm. As she stood on the bridge of the UES Prometheus, Earth's newest and most advanced ship, Lyra felt a mix of awe and trepidation. Before her, stretching as far as the eye could see, were the first components of the swarm. Millions of solar collectors, each the size of a small city, glinted in the harsh light of the sun. "It's beautiful," Commander Dax murmured beside her, "and terrifying." Lyra nodded, Let's hope it's enough. The deployment was a dance of precision and daring. Each collector had to be positioned perfectly, its sensors aligned to channel energy back to the resonators scattered throughout the solar system. The slightest miscalculation could send a collector spiraling into the sun or colliding with its neighbors. For weeks, the work continued. Ships darted between the collectors, making adjustments and repairs. Leviathani crystals, embedded in key points throughout the swarm, pulsed with energy, helping to stabilize the entire network. As the final collector slid into place, a cheer went up across the fleet. Phase 1 of Operation Firewall was complete. Now came the true test. Back on Earth, in a control center deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, Dr. Chen and her team prepared to activate the system. The room was a blend of human and Leviathani technology, holographic displays flickering alongside crystal resonators. All stations report in, Chen called out, her voice tense. One by one, confirmations came in from around the solar system. From Mercury to the Kuiper Belt, resonators stood ready. The Dyson swarm hummed with potential energy, awaiting the signal to begin its work. Chen took a deep breath, then nodded to Carol. Let's light this candle. Carol's form began to pulse, emitting a tone that seemed to vibrate at the quantum level. Human technicians, trained in the Leviathani techniques, joined in. The sound grew, amplified by the technology around them, spreading out across the solar system. On screens throughout the control center, they watched as the energy from the Dyson swarm began to flow. Streams of power, visible as rivers of light, coursed between the collectors and the resonators. The entire solar system seemed to thrum with energy. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, at the edge of the system, where the darkness of the void had begun to encroach, a shimmer appeared. It started small, a mere distortion in space, but it grew, spreading outward in a wave of iridescent energy. The firewall had ignited. Cheers erupted in the control center, echoed across communication channels throughout the system. They had done it. The shield was up, a barrier of harmonic energy standing between humanity and annihilation. But their celebration was short-lived. As the firewall stabilized, long-range sensors detected a disturbance. The void, as if sensing the threat to its advance, was accelerating. Tendrils of nothingness reached out, probing at the edges of the firewall. Admiral Cruz's voice cut through the chatter, her tone grim but determined. All hands, battle stations. This is not the end. This is where we make our stand. As klaxons blared and ships moved into defensive positions, Lyra Sato stood on the bridge of the Prometheus, watching the approaching darkness. They had built their wall of sound and light. Now they would have to defend it, with everything they had. The final battle for the fate of Earth, of the Leviathani, of all life in the face of cosmic oblivion, was about to begin. The final stand. The void's approach was relentless, its tendrils of nothingness probing and pushing against the shimmering barrier of the firewall. The combined fleet of human and Leviathani ships formed a defensive line, a last bulwark should the unthinkable happen and the firewall fail. Aboard the UES Prometheus, Captain Lyra Sato watched the tactical displays with growing concern. The firewall was holding, but at a cost. Energy readings from the Dyson swarm were fluctuating wildly as it struggled to power the massive harmonic resonators. Status report, Lyra barked, her eyes never leaving the screen. Commander Dax's voice was tense. The firewall is stable for now, but we're detecting stress fractures in several of the outer resonators. If they fail, we'll have gaps in our defenses. Lyra nodded grimly. They had known this would be a battle of attrition, but the ferocity of the void's assault was beyond anything they had anticipated. Suddenly, alarms blared across the bridge. A massive tendril of void energy had coalesced, slamming against the firewall with unimaginable force. The barrier held, but the impact sent shockwaves through the system. Multiple resonators offline in Sector 7. Dax shouted over the din. The firewall is weakening. Lyra's mind raced. They needed to buy time, to allow the resonators to recharge and the firewall to stabilize. There was only one option. "All ships, this is Captain Saito," she broadcast across the fleet. "Form up on the Prometheus. We're going in." The plan was audacious and desperate in equal measure. The fleet would push through the firewall, engaging the void directly to draw its attention away from the weakened defenses. It was a gamble that could cost them everything, but it was their only chance. As the ships surged forward, the full might of the void became apparent. Tendrils of dark energy lashed out, grasping at the vessels. Where they touched, matter simply ceased to exist, leaving gaping holes in hull plating. But the fleet fought back with everything they had. Leviathani crystals pulsed with energy, generating localized harmonic fields that pushed back the darkness. Human ingenuity had developed new weapons, missiles that carried payloads of focused sonic energy, beams of concentrated light that seemed to burn away the very fabric of the void. In the midst of the chaos, Kroll's voice came through the comm system. The Leviathani was back on Earth, coordinating with Dr. Chen to modify the harmonic disruptor. "Captain," Kroll's tones were urgent, "we've made a breakthrough. The void, it's not just consuming, it's thinking. The patterns of its attack, they're too coordinated to be random." Lyra's blood ran cold. "Are you saying it's intelligent?" "Not in the way we understand it," Kroll replied, "but there's a central consciousness, a guiding force. If we can target that—" Dr. Chen's voice cut in. "We're recalibrating the resonators now, but we'll need to get closer, much closer, to have any effect." Lyra understood immediately what needed to be done. "Prometheus will get you that shot," she said, her voice steady despite the weight of the decision. "All other ships, fall back to defensive positions. Protect those resonators at all costs." As the rest of the fleet retreated, the Prometheus surged forward, diving deep into the heart of the void. The ship shuddered under the onslaught, systems failing as the very reality around them began to unravel. On the bridge, chaos reigned. Consoles exploded in showers of sparks, the view screen flickered with images of cosmic horror that threatened to drive the crew mad. But through it all, Lyra stood firm, her voice a beacon of calm in the storm. "Steady as she goes," she commanded. "Every meter we advance gives Earth a better chance." As they pushed deeper, strange things began to happen. Time seemed to warp and twist. Crew members reported seeing impossible things, glimpses of other realities, of paths not taken, of worlds consumed by the void. Then, in the heart of the maelstrom, they saw it. A nexus of dark energy, pulsing like a malevolent heart. The core of the void's consciousness. "There," Lyra shouted. "All power to the harmonic disruptor. Fire everything we've got." The Prometheus unleashed its full arsenal. Beams of coherent light, missiles laden with sonic payloads, and at the center of it all, a concentrated burst of harmonic energy that made reality itself scream in protest. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, like a dam breaking, the void began to collapse in on itself. The nexus, struck by the combined might of human and Leviathani technology, started to unravel. But the victory came at a terrible cost. The Prometheus, caught in the backlash of the void's death throes, was being torn apart. "All hands, abandon ship," Lyra ordered, even as she knew it was likely too late. The escape pods would have to navigate through the collapsing void to reach safety. As the bridge crumbled around her, Lyra stood at her post, guiding the dying ship to its final act. With the last of its power, the Prometheus drove deeper into the void, ensuring that the harmonic disruption would reach the very core of the entity. In her final moments, as reality itself seemed to bend and break, Lyra saw something impossible, a shimmering form, neither human nor Leviathani, but something beyond. It reached out to her, and in that touch, she understood. The void had been more than just a force of destruction. It had been a test, a cosmic filter to find species worthy of ascending to a higher plane of existence. In facing it and finding a way to defeat it against all odds, humanity and the Leviathan had proven themselves. As the Prometheus disappeared into the collapsing void, taking its captain with it, a pulse of energy unlike anything ever seen before erupted from the point of contact. It swept across the solar system, through the firewall, touching every human and Leviathan. In that moment, everything changed. The void vanished, not destroyed but transformed. In its place, a new understanding bloomed. The barriers between species, between dimensions, between thought and reality itself began to blur. As the dust settled and the survivors regrouped, they found themselves on the threshold of a new era. The war was over, but the true journey was just beginning. Humanity and the Leviathan, forged in the crucible of existential threat, stood ready to take their place among the cosmic powers. And somewhere, beyond the veil of normal space and time, Lyra Sutto and the crew of the Prometheus watched over them, guardians of a legacy that would echo through eternity. The song of defiance had become a symphony of ascension, and the universe would never be the same. A new dawn. In the aftermath of the void's transformation, Earth and its solar system were bathed in a new light. The pulse that had swept across space had done more than just end the war. It had ushered in a new era of existence for both humanity and the Leviathan. Dr. Elara Chen stood at the window of the newly constructed Unity Tower, her eyes fixed on the horizon where New Lyria's crystalline spires merged seamlessly with the steel and glass of human architecture. The city below was a testament to the new reality they found themselves in, a perfect blend of two civilizations that were rapidly becoming one. It's still hard to believe, isn't it? Admiral Helena Cruz said, joining Chen at the window. The Admiral had aged visibly in the years since the final battle, the weight of command etched into the lines of her face. Chen nodded, a small smile playing on her lips. Every day brings new wonders. The breakthroughs we're making in physics, in medicine, in consciousness itself, it's beyond anything we could have imagined. The pulse had changed them all. Humans found themselves able to perceive and manipulate energy fields in ways that would have seemed like magic just a few years ago. The Leviathan, in turn, had gained a new understanding of physical matter, their crystalline forms becoming more adaptable and resilient. But more than that, it had changed how they saw themselves and their place in the cosmos. Zara Okafor, once a young ensign and now one of the leaders of the new Harmonic Council, entered the room. Her presence seemed to shimmer slightly, as if she existed partially in another dimension. "The first deep space expedition is ready to launch," she announced, her voice carrying undertones that resonated on multiple levels of reality. "We're about to take our first steps into the greater galaxy." The three of them made their way to the launch site, a massive structure that dwarfed the old space centers of the pre-void era. The ship that stood ready to depart was unlike anything that had come before, a fusion of advanced technology and living crystal, capable of traversing not just space, but the very fabrics of reality. As they watched the final preparations, Corral appeared beside them, its form now a constantly shifting kaleidoscope of light and sound. "Our song has changed," it intoned, its voice a harmony of frequencies. "Once, we sang of survival, of defiance against the dark. Now we sing of exploration, of growth, of the infinite possibilities that lie before us." The launch itself was a spectacle unlike any other. As the ship rose into the sky, it left behind not a trail of fire and smoke, but a shimmering path of multidimensional energy. Those watching felt a collective surge of emotion, hope, excitement, and a touch of bittersweet remembrance for those who had sacrificed everything to make this moment possible. In orbit, the Dyson swarm that had once powered their desperate defense now served as a gateway to the stars, each collector a stepping stone to distant worlds and new adventures. As the expedition ship disappeared into the depths of space, Dr. Chen turned to her companions. "You know," she said softly, "I can't help but think of Captain Sutto and the crew of the Prometheus. In a way, they're still out there, watching over us." Admiral Cruz nodded sullenly. "Heroes, every one of them. Their sacrifice made all of this possible. Zara closed her eyes, reaching out with her enhanced senses. "They're more than just memories," she said after a moment. "Sometimes, in the quiet moments between thoughts, I can almost hear them, guiding us, protecting us." Kroll's form pulsed in agreement. The barriers between what we once called life and death have blurred. Those we lost are not gone, merely ascended. They have become part of the greater symphony of existence. As they stood there, contemplating the vastness of their new reality, a gentle hum began to fill the air. It started soft, barely perceptible, but grew steadily. All around them, humans and Lurthani alike paused in their work, turning their faces to the sky. The hum became a melody, complex and beautiful beyond words. It spoke of trials overcome, of bonds forged in adversity, of a future bright with promise. It was the song of two species who had faced annihilation and emerged stronger, united in a way that transcended mere alliance. As the melody reached its crescendo, Dr. Chen felt a presence, familiar yet transformed. For just a moment, she could have sworn she saw Lyra Sato standing among them, her form shimmering with the same energy that now coursed through them all. The apparition smiled, nodded once, and then was gone. Chen blinked back tears, overwhelmed by the moment. "So," she said, her voice thick with emotion, "where do we go from here?" Admiral Cruz squared her shoulders, her eyes bright with purpose. "Everywhere," she said simply. "We go everywhere." Zara grinned, the excitement of youth blending with the wisdom of their shared experiences. "We have a whole universe to explore, new civilizations to meet. And who knows? Maybe we'll find others out there who faced the void and prevailed." Kroll's form sparkled with agreement, "And we will share our song with them, adding their melodies to our own. The symphony of life will grow ever richer, ever more complex." As they turned back to the tasks at hand, preparing for a future that held infinite possibilities, each of them carried with them the lessons of the past, the strength found in unity, the power of hope in the face of overwhelming odds, and the knowledge that even in the darkest of times, a single act of courage could change the course of history. The void had come to devour them, but instead, it had transformed them. Humanity and the Lurthani, once separate and alone in a cold universe, had found in each other the key to unlocking the true potential of sentient life. As the sun set on this new Earth, casting the hybrid cities in a warm glow, the song of their shared destiny echoed across the stars. The Guardians of Hope had done more than just save their worlds. They had opened the door to a future brighter than any could have dreamed. And somewhere, in the vast expanse of the cosmos, that song was heard. New adventures awaited, new challenges to face, new wonders to discover. But whatever lay ahead, they would face it together, human and Lurthani, united in harmony, guardians of a hope that would light the way for eons to come. The end was just the beginning.